Imagine, if you will, holding the absolute ultimate power in the known world. You've got everything, right? Wealth beyond measure, influence beyond comprehension. You're basically elevated above mere mortals. But what if that exact same power was practically a guaranteed death sentence? That is the deadly, inescapable paradox of ancient Rome we're unpacking in this explainer. We're going to break down the mechanics of this supreme authority and look at the brutal reality of what it actually took to wear the purple crown. It's a fascinating, true crime-style breakdown of power, consequence, and, well, survival.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Section 1, Gods, Stabbings, and Poison. We've really got to start by setting the stage with the sheer, unmatched duality of this position. When you think of a Roman emperor, you probably think of invincibility. Marble statues, grand triumphs, unquestioned decrees. But the reality? It was incredibly grim, and it sets up this dark historical hook that we need to keep in mind. The position itself was fundamentally broken, caught somewhere between the illusion of absolute divinity and the brutal frailty of human biology.
I absolutely love how perfectly this captures the morbid reality. To be the Roman emperor was to be a god, but being a god usually ended with a stabbing or a bowl of poisoned mushrooms. I mean, think about it. You could command entire legions across continents, order up colossal amphitheaters, and have temples literally dedicated in your honor. People are bowing to you as a living deity. Yet, despite all that divine posturing, your life could end in the most visceral, mundane, and terrifying ways imaginable. You couldn't even sit down for dinner without wondering if the fungus on your plate was going to stop your heart. The absolute anxiety of that existence, it's just staggering.
And that brings us to the number 12. In just 12 minutes, today we are going to unpack a structural pattern that explains every single Roman emperor's death. Think of this as a rapid, high-stakes historical thriller. We aren't just looking at isolated incidents of bad luck or, one-off betrayals. No, we're looking at a systemic, deeply ingrained pattern. Literally every single death fits into a strict logistical and categorical framework of power dynamics.
Let's move to Section 2, Logistics of Total Control, and see how this builds. Because how does one actually manage a massive, sprawling empire while simultaneously dodging constant assassination attempts? If literally everyone is out to get you, how do you keep the wheels of society turning? Well, it all comes down to the science of total control. To even stand a chance of surviving your reign, you had to master two specific logistical systems. Basically, you had to control the masses, and you had to control the muscle.
First up, managing the people, which really meant managing the food. Enter the Kura Anonyi. This was a massive, incredibly complex logistical system of free food distribution. And honestly, this was step one in the mechanics of power. If you want to keep a massive, dense urban populace from tearing you apart in an immediate, violent revolt, you have to keep them fed. It's just a basic biological imperative scaled all the way up to an imperial level. Managing this wasn't charity. It was the absolute bedrock of political survival. If those grain shipments stopped, the mob would riot and your so-called godhood would be revoked very, very quickly. You are essentially buying your survival through a state-sponsored supply chain.
Now, if the Kura Anonyi managed the civilians, the Imperium Mas managed the military. This was the second pillar of control. It's the legal and structural mechanic that granted a commander absolute supreme military authority over every other official in the empire. It was literally the ultimate trump card. It didn't matter who was in charge of a specific province, your Imperium Mas meant you outranked them, period. And this brilliantly illustrates how power was maintained by force. Without it, the empire would instantly fracture into 100 different warlord fiefdoms. You had to structurally and legally be at the absolute top of the pyramid.
Which brings us to Section 3, Senate versus the Army. Now imagine if getting the ultimate promotion, securing both the food and the military control we just talked about, actually meant stepping right into a lethal trap. Because it turns out, how you got the crown almost completely determined how you were going to lose it. Let's look at this categorical pattern of succession.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between the two primary paths to the throne. On one side, you have emperors who were chosen by the Senate. On the other, you've got emperors elevated by the army. These were the two ultimate kingmakers in Rome. But here's the fatal catch. They were fundamentally opposed to one another. If you were chosen by one, you immediately alienated the other. It was a practically impossible balancing act.
Your succession path literally decided your fate. Just look at how this breaks down. If you were chosen by the Senate, your power base was the political elite. You had the wealth, the old families, the bureaucracy on your side. But you lacked the respect and the raw physical threat of the military forces. Conversely, if you were elevated by the army, your power base was the soldiers. You had the swords, for sure,
But the Senate, the political elite, they viewed you as this illegitimate, uncultured brute. So your origins determine your specific enemies from day one. You were either going to be undermined and poisoned by politicians or overthrown and stabbed by soldiers.
Section 4. The biological target. So the crucial point is that we have to fundamentally reframe how we view the Purple Crown. It was not a safety net. It was definitely not a shield that protected you from the world. Wearing the purple fundamentally altered your relationship with every single human being around you. The crown itself became a massive, glowing target placed squarely on your back.
The absolute terror of this position came down to a few grim realities. The purple literally turned you into a biological target. Because of those mechanics we just discussed, the Imperium Mas and that constant deadly tug of war between the Senate and the army, every single successful general out in the field was a potential rival. If they won too many battles, well, their troops might just decide to elevate them, and suddenly, bam, you've got a civil war on your hands. But it gets even darker. Because you're constantly trying to protect yourself from these outside threats, you naturally build up a massive security apparatus. And here is the ultimate, tragic paradox of Roman power. Those very guards you employ to keep you safe, they become your absolute greatest threat. The exact tools used to maintain your power became the literal instruments of your death. They had the access, they had the weapons, and eventually they always realized they held the real power.
Which leaves us here. If ultimate power simply makes you the ultimate target, is the Purple Crown actually worth its mortal weight? I mean, you get to be a god, sure. You get the food, the armies, the absolute supremacy. But in exchange, you sacrifice your peace, your safety, and almost certainly a natural death. It's a chilling realization about the true nature of supreme authority. The whole system was designed in a way that demanded a ruler, but almost guaranteed their destruction. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Take some time to really think about that fatal paradox, and I'll catch you next time.